morning to you. Welcome to Breakfast with Charlie State and Louise Minchin.
Our headlines today. The COVID vaccine rollout moves into its next phase in the UK after the Health Secretary confirms the most vulnerable groups have all been offered a jab.
There are tough rules for anyone arriving in the UK from high-risk countries from today. A 10-day hotel quarantine with travellers footing the bill.
Good morning. Here at Heathrow, the first passengers are due to leave the airport to begin their 10 days in isolation. But how does the system work? I'll explain a little later.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex announced they're expecting their second child.
It is hard going for England's cricketers in Chennai. They take early wickets in the second test, but the Indian captain Virat Kohli scores a half-century to help extend their lead to almost 400.
Good morning. This week's weather quite different from last week's. We're looking at a lot of mild conditions, very mild for some of us. There'll be rain and it will often be windy, but we're not expecting much frost at all. I'll have all the details later in the programme.
Good morning. It's Monday, the 15th of February. Our top story today. England's COVID vaccine rollout is officially entering a new phase today, with over 65s and the clinically vulnerable now being invited to get their first jab.
In the past few minutes, we heard that the government has kept its promise to offer a jab to the 4 groups most at risk from the virus. Here's our health correspondent, Laura Foster.
It started here in Coventry with Margaret Keenan, and over the last 2 months, the biggest vaccination programme in NHS history went from a single shot to more than 15 million doses across the UK, all administered by healthcare staff and volunteers. May Parsons, who gave the very first injection, says she hadn't anticipated that moment to get so much attention.
It was a phenomenal part of our history. Obviously, 2020 has been really dark and sad and, soul-breaking. And the fact that we've managed to actually offer these is something that everyone needed.
But vaccinations aren't just being administered in hospitals, GP surgeries and pharmacies. Pop-up centres in sports venues and museums helped reach this milestone.
It has been a truly national, UK-wide effort. We've done it together. And I want to thank each and every person who has helped make it happen.
The majority of these vaccinations will be made up of people from the 4 priority groups: the over 70s, frontline health and social care workers, the clinically extremely vulnerable, and care home staff and residents. But that doesn't mean everyone in the 4 groups has had the vaccine. We'll get more figures for each group this afternoon. For now, the message is that if you've been left behind, it's not too late.
If somebody, for whatever reason, hasn't yet chosen to do so, this is an offer that still stands. So whether it's this weekend, whether it's next week, whether it's the days and weeks to come, people can always come forward for that vaccination, even if they have not done so up until now.
Starting today, the over 65s and anyone considered to be clinically vulnerable is being officially invited to get the vaccine. But keeping up the pace of this rollout will get trickier over the next few months, as the NHS will need to keep administering doses to new groups while making sure that those who've already had one come back and get their second booster jabs. Laura Foster, BBC News.
Yes, quite a bit more information on the success of the vaccine rollout emerging this morning. Just a few minutes worth saying we're speaking to the National Medical Director of NHS England, that's Professor Stephen Powis.
Well, let's talk now to Adam Fleming, who's our political correspondent, about all of that. And we're just hearing what they've reached their target, in this huge vaccination programme. Morning.
Hello there. Yeah, so we've got the headline figures about reaching the target, but what government ministers want to do is delve into the data and see how the vaccine is really working in the real world, and particularly how good it is at stopping people passing the virus on to other people, because that will be a crucial factor in how much and how quickly you can lift the lockdown in England. And that is the subject of a lot of discussion in the government. And because there's a discussion amongst ministers, there's lots of bits and pieces leaking out and lots of different opinions in the newspapers about what should happen when. But Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, said maybe we should ignore that because no decisions have been made yet.
There's a huge amount of speculation in the papers. I know people want to know the answer to when the lockdown will end, and the Prime Minister will set that out next Monday on the 22nd of February. We're taking those decisions this week. So we'll be looking at the data, looking at the success of the vaccine rollout and how far that's reached and its impact in terms of protecting people, looking at the number of cases, then critically looking at the number of people who are in hospital and the number of deaths. Those two factors are vital.
So what do we know? Ministers will look at the latest scientific data at the end of this week. The Prime Minister, as we were just hearing there, will publish a plan to Parliament for lifting the lockdown on Monday. He has said that broadly it will go schools first, then outdoor activities, then retail, then hospitality. And talking to people in the government this morning, they are increasingly confident that English pupils will be able to go back on the 8th of March.
OK, Adam, we're just going to keep that question in mind all week. What do we know? Thank you.
Anyone arriving in England from a country with high rates of COVID will have to quarantine in a government-approved hotel from this morning at their own expense and for 10 days.
Portugal, Brazil and South Africa are among the 33 nations on the so-called red list. Ben's following events at Heathrow for us this morning, and this came into force this early hours, didn't it, Ben? Just take us what you know. Take us through what you know.
Yeah, good morning to you. The first passengers just come through the doors here to begin their 10-day stay in isolation in a hotel just here at Heathrow. What they've done is arrive on a flight. It's worth saying there are no direct flights from those red list countries. They may have come on an indirect flight, so changed somewhere from one of those countries and then arrived in the UK. What they will do now is be taken from here to a hotel to begin that stay. What they will do, 10 days in a hotel, a mandatory isolation. They won't be allowed out of their room except for a little bit of exercise or fresh air. They will have a test on day 2 and another one on day 8, and only if that day 8 test is negative will they be released from that quarantine on the 10th day. They will pay £1,750 for the privilege of that stay, paid for by the passengers, and crucially, of course, they will not be able to leave anywhere else. So they've had to declare themselves at the airport when they came through immigration, and they will be stuck in that hotel. Now, it's very interesting, of course, the demand for this system is not expected to be huge as it was in countries like Australia, and that is because the government is hoping that people have made alternative arrangements. They've decided not to travel, or they've had a bit of time to get back before those rules come into force. Now, Heathrow and Gatwick are expected to be the busiest as far as that system is concerned. In Scotland, it's worth saying, of course, that any arrivals, whether you're on the red list or not, will have to take that 10-day hotel isolation. But here at Heathrow, the first passengers literally just coming through the doors within the last few minutes to begin their stay in isolation.
Ben, thank you.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, have revealed they're expecting a second child. They announced the news with a photograph of Meghan cradling her bump while resting her head on Harry's lap. Last year, the Duchess revealed she'd suffered a miscarriage during the summer.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.